You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's a Week 12 crossover Thursday. Locked On Titans, Locked On Panthers. We're going to dive into everything you need to know before this matchup, the storylines, the matchups to watch, maybe even some predictions, talk about where these teams are going in the future. Before we get into all of it, though, do want to let you guys know that this crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. I am Tyler Rowland, local expert and host of Locked On Titans, here with Julian Council, local expert and host of Locked On Panthers. Julian, the only real place that we can start here, well, thank you for making Locked On Panthers and Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Get that in, your team every day. But the only place that we can start here with a team that's 1-9 and a team that's 3-7 is with the rookie quarterbacks. Both rookie quarterbacks have had some moments that haven't been so great, but I'm sure from your perspective, watching the team and knowing the team, you know that that's maybe not all on the quarterback. But overall, generally speaking, what is your assessment, both good and bad, of Bryce Young so far this year?
Well, first off, Tyler, it's good to get to talk to you, man, because I think it's the first time we've done a crossover. It's good to be talking the Titans fans. Again, I used to work in Nashville and cover the team for the local ESPN station 102.5 The Game. So happy to do it. I actually wore my Southern Grist brewing shirt because it's my favorite brewery in Nashville. So just thought I'd say what's up to the Titans fans out there and what's up to you. But yeah, as far as Bryce Young goes, it ain't been great, man. To be honest with you, it's been a struggle. And it's not all on Bryce Young. Now, before I get to that, let me first say this. Bryce Young, as the number one overall pick, there were expectations that were placed on him by the coaching staff that he would be the most ready of this current draft class that just came out, of Will Levis there in Tennessee, of Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, and of C.J. Stroud. Clearly, that was not the case because we have not seen Bryce Young look like someone who's even ready to elevate what's around him. I haven't sat here and watched a ton of Texans games aside from the one that I saw that they played here and in 2 Sundays back when they had to win in Cincinnati. That's the most Texans I've seen. But it looks like C.J. Stroud has been the most prepared and maybe he's in the best situation. And I don't think a lot of people would have said that heading into the season. But Bryce Young's situation has not been great. So while Bryce Young has not looked as prepared as we expected, the receiver talent outside of Adam Thielen has been horrible. Hayden Hurst, who is expected to be a key contributor at the tight end position, is not even atop the depth chart. He also may not play for the second week in a row as he's in concussion protocol. The run game has been more miss than hit, and that was really what the Panthers leaned on last year when Steve Wilks was here in Carolina. You guys know about it because Deontay Foreman, when Derrick Henry went out, he helped the Titans get to the number one overall seed in the AFC. So the Panthers said, no, we're good. We don't want to pay $3 million. We'd rather pay $25 million for running back Miles Sanders, who has not been good. And then the offensive line. Now, there have been injury issues. Brady Christensen, the starting left guard, went out after week 1 for the season. Austin Corbett started off on PUP, missed for 6 weeks. He announced on Wednesday is out for the season with another left knee injury, this time an MCL, not an ACL. But outside of them, like the guys they put in there that they've drafted the last couple of years, whether it's been Cade Mays or Chandler Zavala, have not played well at the guard spots. They also have not gotten production out of their left tackle, Ike Ekwonu, who they drafted 6 overall in 2022. So Bryce Young, he has not looked great, and it's partially on Bryce, but a lot of it is on what's around him. And I didn't even talk about the all-star coaching staff and the play calling that has left him in the dirt because of what's gone on. So it's been a multitude of things, Tyler, but I hope things have been better in Tennessee because it feels like Will Levis has at least gotten people there in Tennessee to believe that this might be the guy long-term.
Yeah, well, it's been better by 2 wins. It's how much better it's been. It's 2 wins total. But no, I think when you look at Will Levis, I think you're right about that. I think what we've seen from him when he's gotten an opportunity has inspired people. And maybe Carolina Panthers fans can't quite say that. But I think the Titans, and this is hard for Titans fans to hear, but the Titans offensive line might be better than the Panthers offensive line. I know that Titans fans right now are slamming their keyboards. No way. But I promise you, if you watched enough football around the NFL, there are worse offensive lines and some other worse situations. The Titans are definitely in the bottom 5 there, but Carolina could have the worst offensive line situation in the league, them, the New York Giants and stuff like that. So while Will Levis has been incredibly hindered by Will Levis's hit percentage, Will Levis's pressure percentage is higher than Bryce Young's, if you look at, on a per game basis. So Will Levis is getting hit too, but when he's given time on some of these long developing play action passes, some of the balls that he throws down the field, it's obvious that you've seen this guy can make any throw in the NFL. There is no place on the field that's off limits to Will Levis's arm. He can get there. Now, with that, there's some decision-making because he has that arm arrogance and that arm talent. And he knows that he can get it there. But again, with the lack of receiver talent, the Titans wide receivers do not get separation. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL in separation at wide receiver. Even DeAndre Hopkins, who has played well this year and is still a good receiver, he's struggled against press coverage. If you give him off coverage, he'll get out there and he'll get open. But press coverage, it's tough for him to get also. The Titans wide receivers don't separate. The offensive line isn't good. I think the play calling has actually been okay. I'm not going to criticize Tim Kelly too much.
So it's been better than Todd Downing?
Yes, it has been better than Todd Downing. Some Titans fans don't like that and don't want to admit that. And, the points per game is less and all this, but it's just a much more creative plan on a weekly basis. And when Levis has gotten the opportunities, he's shown flashes that you can see, okay, if you just get a little bit better around him, this guy's going to make plays every week that win you games. So while it's been bad and maybe the stats don't look great for Levis, especially after he kind of fool's gold 4-touchdown performance, I think he's got a lot of talent, but maybe that set the bar a little too high. They were playing at home. Falcons team without a great pass rush. Atlanta. All those things come together. But I think, again, while it's been a lot of bad around him and Levis has done his own bad with decision-making, we've seen flashes from Will Levis that I think should have Titans fans inspired about what he can do going forward if the team gets better.
And that's the thing, man. The flashes. I told Panther fans going into the season, the only thing that mattered this year, obviously, yes, you want to win games. You want to be in the playoff hunt. You saw what happened when Steve Wilkes took over last year. And in an awful division, they were right there and playing in a de facto NFC South title game in Week 17 at Tampa. I understand all of that. But when you give up the farm and you are pretty much turning over your entire skill core on offense and having a new coaching staff, new system, it's going to take time. The only thing that mattered was the development of Bryce Young. And the fact that Bryce Young has not developed to the point that we would expect for someone who started 9 games so far this season, that's why I feel like this coaching staff is on their way out the door to being one and done. And that's the thing, at least in Tennessee. You saw it instantly. 4 touchdowns. Yeah, the Falcons going to Falcon. If any team's going to give up 4 touchdowns to a rookie quarterback in his debut, it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons. We all know that. But when Bryce Young had his debut, he threw 2 interceptions, had 1 touchdown pass. He didn't do that. And we have not seen the offensive passing game because they have the same issues the Titans have. Separation. Like the Titans have 1 good receiver. That's Nuke Hopkins. The Panthers have 1 good receiver. That's Adam Thielen. The rest of it's like, okay, maybe Nick Westbrook-Ikhine can give you something every once in a while, but no one else for the Carolina Panthers is giving you anything consistently in the pass game. So, yeah, it's been much of the same. It sounds like, at least though, in Tennessee, y'all might feel it hasn't had that many snaps. There have also been years where it's, okay, Tannehill, he's the guy right now. Maybe people trying to convince themselves he can be a Super Bowl quarterback. I always thought that was ridiculous, but good enough to get to the playoffs. But now it's like, all right, let's move on. Malik Willis clearly was not that guy. You see what Will Levis does, his arm talent, the physical stature, that gets you excited. Panther fans still question the physical stature of Bryce Young, his ability to have the arm strength. And
it's a big man's game.
Yeah, he just does not look the part, and it does not make things better for the folks that don't believe when you see kind of how everything's been around him and also how he's responded to this environment this season. So it'll be interesting to see because it's going to be another referendum game for the Carolina Panthers and choosing Bryce Young.
It's funny that you say that because on Locked On NFL on the Thursday edition that I do with Alex Clancy, I talked about how this might be a loser goes home game. If Mike Vrabel loses this game at home to Frank Reich and the Carolina Panthers, like that may be enough to embarrass ownership into making a move. And similarly, if the Titans go out there as a 3-7 team with a rookie quarterback who was the last one drafted instead of the first one drafted out of the ones that people were actually paying attention to, that might be enough for Frank Reich to get canned, because this is a conversation that I've been having with Titans fans recently. Although the roster is bad and the expectations are low, you still expect to see certain young players get better throughout the season. And It seems like in Carolina, and it seems like in Tennessee a little bit, you're not necessarily seeing that. So I think they're at different levels here, but I'm just setting the stakes for this is a big game for both of these head coaches. But we're going to continue breaking down this game. We're going to talk about some matchups that matter, talk about how we think the game might play out at the end of the show. Before we get into all of that, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. I love PrizePicks because you can put together a lineup in like less than 60 seconds. So here's how it works. PrizePicks has a projection for every player. Adam Thielen, 4 catches. DeAndre Hopkins, 50 yards. Bryce Young, 175 passing yards. Will Levis, 1 interception. Derrick Henry, 80 rushing yards. You see what I mean here? And all you do is you pick 2 to 6 players and say whether that player is going to do more or less than the PrizePicks projection. If you win, you can get up to 25 times your money. And PrizePicks has even made it even more fun to where you can combine NFL, NBA, different sports. So I can do Derrick Henry touchdowns and LeBron James 3-pointers. So make sure that you guys go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. It's PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Julian, we are continuing this crossover Thursday edition, Week 12, Locked on Titans, Locked on Panthers. Thank you guys for making us your first listen each and every day. We're going to have reaction episodes after the game to everything that happened, a ton of content for you guys next week leading up to the end of the season and then the draft and free agency, which both of these fan bases may be intimately ready for. But with that being said, we are going to get into some matchup stuff here. Julian, go ahead, tell us. I know you talked about the offensive line and everything. Is there a matchup in this game that you're looking for that might help the Panthers get a win here?
Yeah, Tyler, fans are excited about the offseason because they think they're going to have a new head coach and general manager. But as far as the draft goes, that's kind of a touchy subject here in Carolina since they gave up their number 1 pick to move up to get Bryce Young. And that currently is number 1 overall going to Chicago. So, yeah.
They could use DJ Moore still, too. He would be a good weapon for your rookie quarterback. I don't know.
Yes. They absolutely could have used DJ Moore. But, right. we move on. But as far as matchups, I am interested to see how the Panthers are able to line up there at the guard spots. That has been an issue, as I've talked about all season long, the interior of the offensive line. It's not just the fact that Christensen's been out the left guard and Corbett's now out. He's only been able to play 4 games this season. It's that the young guys Chandler Zavala, the 4th round pick at NC State, who's coming. Right. He's played right guard for a game. He's started at left guard now for 6 games. He has not looked very good. Cade Mays, he's looked okay in the opportunities that he's gotten to Tennessee Vol, which I'm sure plenty of your listeners are familiar with. Right. Those guys have had their struggles. They cut Calvin Throckmorton, who was starting.
Who's on the Titans now. Yeah, classic revenge game. Right. Information. They tried to steal him away. Tell us everything about the Panthers offense so we can win in Week 12.
They can't block. They can't do anything positive. So I don't know what I can tell you. That's what Calvin Throckmorton probably told them. But he struggled when he was here, but he was not nearly as bad as what we've seen from Zavala, who they cut Throckmorton to put him out there in the lineup. Now, Frank Reich was being very coy as far as who would be there at left guard, at right guard, now that you have Corbett out for the rest of the season. In my opinion, a guy like Nash Jensen, a UDFA out of North Dakota State, who has gotten a jersey a couple times this season, has yet to play a snap, I feel like it's time to give him an opportunity because clearly Zavala is just not it right now. And the season's lost anyways. You should be thinking about the youth movement, trying to find some guys. If this staff's going to stick around, you should be trying to find some guys that can go in there and actually help you. Because so far you've seen that Zavala has not helped you at all. And I'm just very curious to see what those guys are able to do against a player in Jeffrey Simmons, who is an absolute freaking monster. So they have struggled so far when they played players of that caliber. And I am very concerned, like I am each and every week, How about Bryce Young's health? Now, Bryce Young has been sacked 39 times. Well, he hasn't been sacked 39 times. The Panthers have allowed 39 sacks, which I think is like one more than the Titans. These teams are 4th and 5th in sacks allowed this season, which is awful. Not as bad as apparently Washington's like in the 60s or something.
Yeah, like Washington is elite in the worst way possible.
Like, what on earth? Now, as a North Carolina Tar Heel football fan, I know that Sam Howell holds onto the football too long, but like, come on now. But I'm concerned.
Can't be all him.
I'm concerned about what they're able to do in the interior. Be able to protect Bryce, but also losing Corbett, that could impact the run game. The run game was pretty effective with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders combining for over 100 yards rushing for the first time this season. And without Corbett there in the interior at that right guard spot, being able to anchor kind of the downhill rushing attack, which they went to last week, I'm concerned about their ability to run the football. I know the Titans aren't great against the run, but I'm concerned about their ability to run the football and also their ability to, not have Jeffrey Simmons in Bryce Young's lap all day long.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And honestly, the Titans, maybe statistically, it's weird because the Titans held their opponent under like 90 yards rushing the first 4 weeks of the season. And then the next 4 games that they played, it was like 194, 140, 120. Like, it was crazy. It was like Jekyll and Hyde night and day. And I think that the Titans are going to be more of the beginning of the season version of themselves against a bad offensive line because of what you're talking about. And Jeffrey Simmons absolutely has to dominate the matchup for the Titans. He's a $100 million player, and he needs to look like it against guys who are just trying to find their footing in the league, quite honestly. It's a home run matchup for Jeffrey Simmons, and the Titans pass rush has been hot and cold this year because Arden Key on the outside maybe hasn't looked like a full-time starter. Danico Autry does look a step slower as he gets 33, closer to 34. And then Harold Landry came back from an ACL tear, and he's really started to come on the last couple of games, which ACL recovery, shouldn't be shocked by that, but he struggled early. So that helps. But this Titans pass rush has been hot and cold. And if they have a cold day against this Panthers team, the Titans have the tendency to be a get-right game for teams. Look, the Jaguars look terrible all year. The offense is terrible. They're burning it down in Jacksonville. They're, 6-3 and angry because the offense hasn't looked good. Trevor Lawrence, he's a star quarterback again after he plays the Titans. Calvin Ridley, terrible all year, quiet. 2 touchdowns against the Titans. It's a get-right game. I mean, even Matt Canada got right against the Titans on offense and scored 20 points for his team and won the game. So if Bryce Young has a get-right game here, that would be the worst thing possible. But that's only going to have a chance to happen if Jeffrey Simmons has a bad game and the pass rush goes completely cold, and I just don't think they will. On the flip side of that, the Titans offensive line, you talk about shuffling names. Jalen Duncan, 6th-round pick out of Maryland, came in and played the second half after an injury to Chris Hubbard last week against the Jaguars. And he played relatively well, especially in pass protection. 0 sacks, 0 pressures, strong hands, good balance, wide, did a pretty good job. But he might not play this week because Mike Vrabel might decide to go back to Andre Dillard, who has allowed the most sacks in the NFL with 10, who has allowed the second most pressures in the NFL with 36. Like you were saying about Zavala and the depth there, we know that Andre Dillard is not good enough to be a starter in the NFL at left tackle, and we know that if you play him there, he's going to be the worst starting offensive lineman in the NFL. The numbers prove it out. He's only played in 9 games. Everyone else is 10, 11, and he's far and away the most sacks allowed in the NFL of any offensive lineman. So play Jalen Duncan, the rookie, at left tackle with Dylan Ravens at right tackle, which is where he's going to be playing this week, and see if you have something because, again, you're 3-7, and while you want to protect Levis, it's also important to develop your future and see what you have in some of these players so you can make smart decisions in the offseason, which is what really matters for this team now. So for me, you're looking at the offensive line for the Panthers. I'm looking at the offensive line for the Titans, and I think whichever offensive line is worse in this game is probably the team that loses.
Yeah, and look, it's a line of scrimmage game. I know we like to focus a lot. We start the show talking about quarterbacks. Okay, well, we've seen if they're not protected, it does not matter because they can't do anything. Like, I am far more focused right now on what the offensive line can do to protect Bryce Young, and also kind of flip it around because we talk about this. We're focused on the offensive lines, but we're also focused on the 2 premier defensive tackles. Yours, Jeffrey Simmons, in Carolina, Derek Brown, who's been awesome. He has been.
And then Brian Burns added into it.
Yeah, Burns on the outside. Like those guys, they have to have a big day. And Andre Dillard, you know that he is not a good football player because he was drafted by the Eagles, and the Eagles are the best O-line in football. And they said, you know what? we're good here. So if the Eagles are good there, then you should probably think about whether you want them. But it's just so funny to me because I know ahead of last season, there was a trade between the Titans and Panthers where the Titans got Dennis Daly.
Oh,
and I had someone hit me up immediately who covers the team, and they're like, oh, so what do you think about Daly? It's like, there's a reason why Dennis Daly ain't here anymore.
Teams don't give up offensive linemen, man. They don't do it.
And this is a team that, when going to last season, was hoping the O-line would be improved, which it was, which has been part of the frustration this year. I know, injuries aside, just a regression from this unit overall, considering that majority of the guys came back. They're all under contract again next year. So some interesting questions to be asked here in Carolina. But I just remember seeing all fall long, just Titans fans. I still have so many people like that in my timeline on Twitter who who cover the Titans or talk about them, and just the amount of complaining about Dennis Daly. It's just
I see his name daily still. No pun intended. I see his name daily still. So with that being said, though, we are going to get into some of our predictions or just thoughts about how this might go, not only the game, but the season for these teams. So we're going to dive into that in just a moment. Before we do, just want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Titans and Locked On Panthers your first listen each and every day. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Titans fans, Panthers fans, we are going to cap off this crossover Thursday edition. Do want to remind you guys first, though, about something really, really cool that we're doing here at Locked On. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with takes from local experts like me and like Julian, with coverage from our national shows as well. Make sure that you go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Be a part of history. All right, Julian, I got to tell you, I know some people don't like to do predictions. Some people like to do the predictions. Some people are hit or miss. I'm not going to lie. I think the Titans win big this week. I think the Titans are a better team. I think the Titans are a better coach team. Mike Vrabel is 6 out of his last 7 against Frank Reich. I know that was with the Colts, but Frank Reich's got a worse team now. Titans are worse too, in fairness, though. But I just think Mike Vrabel has a coaching advantage over Frank Reich because of their past experience. I think the Titans have a better roster overall, even though neither team has a very good roster. And I think the Titans are at home, and the Titans are 3-0 when they play in Nashville this year. They've lost every other game that they played away from their home field. So I just think the Titans are primed for a win here. They've been losing a ton on the road. They come back home. I think the energy is going to be good. Carolina doesn't have the fan base that will invade the stadium like the Eagles or the Steelers, things like that. That's another reality here too. So I think the Titans are just in a good spot here where they match up well. They have good advantages, and they're at home. I had the Titans winning this one pretty handily, like 28-13, I think is where I'm settling.
Okay. The defense in Carolina has gotten healthier. Now, JC Horn.
It's not terrible. Yeah.
No, they've, since the bye after week 6, they've been fairly solid. Sunday against Dallas, the only problem that they have is that they are just so undisciplined. They make the dumbest mistakes, the unnecessary roughness, hitting quarterback late when he's sliding, just all of that kind of dumb things that gifted the Cowboys 10 points on Sunday, because they honestly were that unit's been competitive for the most part. And now that you have Burns, you only missed 1 game, but Brown's been good. They've been able to get guys like Von Bell back recently, Xavier Woods. So both their safeties are back the last couple of weeks. And the hope is that on Sunday, JC Horn, their star corner, who has only been able to play a half this season, will be back after the hamstring. So he's right now designated return. Frank Reich said on Wednesday that he'll see whether he's ready to go or not, but the hope is that he'll be ready to play. Same thing with CJ Henderson, who they missed. I think, he came back. I think he came back last week. Maybe he missed last week. He missed last week with the concussion. So to get him back, then you would have your top 3 corners. That should help the Panthers out and being able to hopefully, kind of stem the tide and not allow Tennessee to be able to put up 28 points. I think that's a team offensively, from everything that, I've heard from you, and also I just know about the Titans this year. The Panthers should not be giving up 28 points to this team. I think
not if they're a respectable defense.
No. And they are when healthy. The problem is they really have not been healthy, but they've gotten healthier. Right. They've been better over the last 4 weeks or so. So I do think this would probably be a low scoring slugfest, a game that, look, on a docket when it comes to Sunday Ticket, ain't nobody looking at 1-9 Carolina and 3-7 Tennessee unless they're a Panthers fan, a Titans fan, or a masochist, or both, and wanting to watch this football game.
All
So
of the above. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. The Panthers have been underdogs all year long. I am not going to pick them to win this game. I quite honestly am not overly concerned whether they win or lose. The only thing that I'm concerned about is Bryce Young's health and Bryce Young taking a step forward. Like, that is what's important.
Well, then let me ask you that question. What do you think this team should do going forward? You keep Bryce Young, obviously. You gave up so much. You have to do that. Do you think they should replace their coach and GM and look for kind of a new regime?
I think they're going to have to. I just don't.
Right.
For me, I'm not someone who's like, fire this guy, fire that guy. I just think it's bad karma. And I mean, obviously, they're going to be fine. They're millionaires. Like, it was a story where Frank Reich, first quarterback in franchise history. It's kind of a nice story. Now, the better story was Steve Wilkes, who's actually homegrown here in Carolina, being able to get the head coaching job. But like, and I went to high school with Frank Reich's kids, so like I can see the sentimental value there. So I didn't know them, but still, I do. Like, I'm a human being. They're human beings. I don't take any joy in like saying like, oh, I want this guy fired. Like, Matt Rule, it was time to go. Frank Reich, I just don't see a path forward because, okay, man, David Tepper, the owner here, is the main problem in Carolina. He's way too involved. But he wanted to go out there, get an offensive coach and someone who had experience, because he did not have an offensive coach. Matt Rule is more of like a vibes guy. He doesn't have a specialty. It's just vibes, and clearly the vibes does not work. It works better in college when you can have a heightened playing
control
field.
Everything.
Yeah, you can control everything, and you can talk to players like the way he wanted to talk to Panther players, and have the way of the Panther, that kind of nonsense. Like, that works for 18 and 22-year-old kids.
That rah-rah stuff is for the kids.
Yeah, it doesn't work on adults, but he wanted to go get an offensive coach who had experience, and Matt Rule didn't have a lot of NFL experience. So in theory, I appreciate everything they did in the offseason by doing that, even though I thought Wilkes should have got the job and earned the job and had won over the locker room. I appreciate their aggressiveness and having a plan, because they have not had a plan as far as a quarterback the last couple of off seasons. They finally demonstrated that. But when you have the plan to put Bryce Young around a veteran coaching staff that has an offensive expertise, and this is the result, I just don't know how there's any sort of argument to bring them back next year. But this is not going to be an attractive job. The owner's way too involved. It's going to be, if it's a general manager, they don't have a first round pick to work with. They have like 6 draft picks to work with anyways. And then it's a quarterback that you didn't draft. And then again, the owner's way too involved. And then the head coach is going to have to be someone who really wants to work with Bryce Young. So it feels like that's what they're going to have to do. I just wonder, is it actually going to be better if they move on, just knowing that who's going to want to come here and deal with David Tepper?
Yeah, that's tough. Too much owner meddling definitely can turn people off. And that there are conversations in Tennessee about just how much the owner is involved. What's the relationship? What's the hierarchy? Is Rand Carthon, the new general manager, actually like over Mike Vrabel? Could he fire Mike Vrabel? Or, is there no way? And Mike Vrabel is actually in charge of everything, and there's an understanding that the team isn't good. There's a lot of mystery there. And if we knew exactly how it was kind of lined out, it would tell us a lot about the way this season is going and some of the responses that we've seen. But I think for the Titans going forward, I think you build around Will Levis. You're probably not going to have a chance at one of the top 2 quarterbacks and top 2 picks. So you're looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. maybe if it goes really bad, looking at 2 of the offensive tackles more likely. And that would probably be a good fit for the Titans as well. So I think where the Titans are at right now, because of the flashes that we talked about at the beginning of the show, Titans probably stick with Will Levis now, no matter how high of a pick they get, and try to build around him. So it'll be interesting to watch how these teams build around the 2 young quarterbacks that they have going forward.
Yeah, and let me ask you this, because I know you talked about Braves potentially being on the hot seat, which I find interesting. And if you do that, because this is like an even bigger conversation. And if Ryan Day on Saturday loses to Michigan without Jim Harbaugh, the Buckeyes are going to be like ready, like, hey, please.
Well, I think the bigger thing that we should be listening to is Bill Belichick's probably done in New England after the season. And Mike Vrabel during the Titans bye week went and was enshrined in the Patriots Hall of Fame and saying it's different here and this and that. The Patriots have traded for a coach before in Bill Belichick. And there's some rumor from Ben Volen at the Boston Globe that the Patriots could be interested in trading for Mike Vrabel, who's under contract. I think that would be crazy because Vrabel hasn't had the pedigree that some of these other coaches that have been traded for has. But that would be something interesting. I get the Ohio State angle too. At the end of the day, though, I think that last year, Mike Vrabel went to the owner of the team and said, hey, this roster's terrible. He traded the general manager of the past one, traded away A.J. Brown like a moron. That was one of the worst trades in NFL history. He whiffed on the first-round pick on Isaiah Wilson, our offensive tackle, in 2020, whiffed on the cornerback Caleb Farley in 2021. This roster's terrible, and I can't coach this bad team. We're getting smoked out here, all right? And the owner said, you're right. I'm firing the general manager right now, and we can hire a new general manager that works better with you in the offseason. So although it looks like Mike Vrabel should be on the hot seat or could be on the hot seat, I think if that is correct, I think that Mike Vrabel probably has a whole nother year because the Titans have $100 million in cap space and more draft picks this year than they did last year. So I think they're going to give Vrabel another offseason to build a team he wants.
They should. I think Vrabel's a good coach. I honestly do. And
a lot of my listeners aren't going to like hearing that from you. A lot of them think because young players are not getting better. You know what I mean? And that is kind of the judge of a coach, even with a bad roster.
It's difficult. Like when I was there in Tennessee, I was there in 16, 17, and 18. So I was there for the end of malarkey when he basically, I guess he got fired because he was so tied to Terry Robisky, which to me is still insane. But I did think that was kind of the right move to kind of level up there as far as coach did. And I think they leveled up Mike Vrabel. And they've had pieces that you let Conklin leave. Now, Corey Davis, that never worked out. Like the John Robinson you mentioned, like it's like
Robinson made so many bad moves.
Do you vet some of these guys like Trey Tola and like his whole thing at the bar on Demumbrian that happened? And there was someone else who was with him there that day.
Tajay Spears.
Yeah,
Tajay Sharp. Tajay Sharp.
Yeah. I mean, like what is going on with all of that? So like Robinson obviously was able to build winning teams, but just had so many guys who were just knuckleheads and misses. And then he got fired right after the Eagles game last year. So
I think he had bad connections, Julian. Yeah. I think he had bad connections to learn about who players really were. Like he didn't have good intel. That's how you miss on a guy like Isaiah Wilson, who's making rap videos and drinking lean and standing on cars and stuff when he just signed the contract. Like that's how you draft guys like that, because whoever is giving you, hey, he's a good kid, pick him in the first round, he'll develop. Whoever is telling you that is wrong. In the COVID drafts where COVID impacted the process in 2020 and 2021, that's where John Robinson fell off the rails and ruined the team. So I just think he had really bad intel. But I've been saying about Mike Vrabel this week, the Titans don't just need a rapper. They need someone who can make the beat. They need someone who can sing the hook. They need someone who can master the track. The Titans don't just need a driver like they needed in 2018 when Vrabel took over. They had a good roster. They needed a coach to elevate them. They needed a driver to drive the car. The Titans need somebody who can build an engine now. Yeah. So I think Vrabel is a good coach. I do, but I don't know if he's the right coach for the Titans.
I guess, I mean, I've been on the outside now for like 5 years dealing with my own mess here in Carolina, but I just, from my perspective and some of the stuff I still see that comes through my feed, I feel like, obviously, you talk about the roster is not good enough. Vrabel went out there and said it as much. Right. They get a better roster. I do think Vrabel is a good enough coach. And if they do get rid of Mike Vrabel, he'll have another job. Like
he will.
He'll have a job, whether it could be New England, where you go with the college ranks. He'll end up getting a better job if they want to get rid of him in Tennessee. So I just think that's, from my outside perspective, as someone who's been there, who's covered the team, who saw the transition, has also looked from afar and see what Vrabel's done. Like, come on, man. He got the Titans with Ryan Tannehill.
Some people said that in Indianapolis, too, about Frank Reich, though. Yeah. Oh, if you fire Frank Reich, he'll get hired. He'll get a better – and you just never know.
But I mean, this guy took the Titans, man, to Titans with Ryan Tannehill to the number one seed. And I get it. Things didn't work well that day. And Tannehill's
he likes to play that way, though, Julian. Mike Vrabel would win every game 3-0 if he could. He loves it. He loves it.
He's a ball coach, old school like I like.
Yes, exactly. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this crossover Thursday for Week 12. It is Thanksgiving as well for most of you guys listening to this, so happy Thanksgiving out there to everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Locked on Titans, Locked on Panthers. Make sure you tune back in for game previews, game recaps, all of that. Everybody stay safe out there. Have a great Thanksgiving and have a good weekend.